morning and welcome to everyone. I am the chair of the University Faculty Senate and a member of this faculty since 1967 in the History Department at the College of Staten Island and the Graduate School. It is a great pleasure to see you all here today and welcome you to a meeting which we hope will produce a permanent and significant set of consequences. Once upon a time, not that long ago, this university was able to provide a wide range of educational programs, and if I'm not mistaken, up through the master's, to persons who were incarcerated, with the hope that their lives would be helped in any way possible. In the 1990s, with the elimination of public support, notably TAP funding, these initiatives were eliminated, and that eliminated the opportunities and hopes for permanent alteration in the lives of people leaving prison. We expect today to learn a lot from each of you and from each other, and perhaps end up devising a strategy for restoring some measure of public support that goes beyond the wonderful private funding, but the private funding, of course, can never be sufficient.
For just about every person, including all of us, one alternative we could engage in is criminal behavior, with potentially very large and immediate payoffs. There are also some possible big negative payoffs, such as having to go to jail, but those outcomes are delayed, and therefore they are discounted. So the financial or other rewards that you can get from criminal behavior can be very immediate and thus are not discounted, but the negative consequences tend to be more delayed and therefore discounted. So it's very possible for some people that engaging in criminal behavior can be the alternative of very high value. So this means that someone is likely to engage in criminal behavior unless they have an alternative that is of at least equal value. And that's where education comes in. Education can help give someone the skills and the degree necessary to get a good job and to do well at that job. So that means that someone with skills and a degree is going to be less likely to engage in criminal behavior because that person, in seeking financial and other rewards, has an alternative to the criminal behavior to be able to obtain those things. Such a person has a very viable alternative when they've had the education. And there are also other benefits of education, not just making money, but there are other benefits of education that will help the person be a more informed and positively contributing citizen.
CUNY is an institution that stands for open access to the public, higher education to the public. As we know, in past years, a large proportion of the public has been incarcerated. And we have a goal of, at least the UFS has a goal of making higher education available to those people.
Once a week for a semester. We have a traditional college course, traditional except that the classroom is at Taconic Correctional Facility for women. And the class is comprised of 12 students from Vassar and 12 students from Taconic. And everyone receives Vassar College credit for the course. Larry Mamiya now has credit-bearing classes with Vassar students at Otisville, which is a medium men's security prison, and he continues to do field work with Vassar students at Greenhaven Prison and Otisville as well. So we have a number of initiatives, and we really hope to build from there. My own opinion of these programs is that they are worth anything you can do to get them established. They benefit and they change the traditional college students that become involved, and you'll hear some of that in a moment. They benefit and they change the students within the prison, and certainly these have been among the best experiences that I've had in more than 30 years of teaching. And in large measure, I think it's because they define what education is ideally all about. It's meant to expand our horizons, right? It's meant to affect us deeply. And these classes do just that. They make you very aware of the privilege and the power of education. And education is also meant to be a space, I would say a sacred space, where we can connect with one another as a community of scholars. Connect sometimes across great differences, to learn together and to learn from one another. And for whatever reason, in that particular prison space, there's a keen awareness that we may all be different, but everyone has things to offer. Everyone is invited forward. Now, I've heard from incarcerated women many times that for those 2.5 hours of the week, they don't feel like they're in prison. They begin to have a different image of themselves, of who they are, and what they can accomplish. It's transformative education for all of us, and I don't use the word lightly.
So the experience of being able to go and really have a diversity of background and really have a diversity of opinion and an age diversity, too, that you don't ever see in a college classroom was a huge benefit for me and for the other students in the class. I don't think it failed to be a life-changing experience for any of the students. And just the opportunity to be studying things. I mean, the class that I took was entitled Gender, Social Problems, and Social Change. And being able to study those topics in the setting of a prison for women was really just phenomenal, and it doesn't compare really to what you can do on a college campus.
It really was a transformative educational experience, as Professor Leonard has said. It really put in perspective basically everything we've been doing at Vassar and why what we study actually matters in the real world. I mean, I'm a political science major, and we talk about policy and welfare reform and all these things in very dry academic terms, but going to Taconic really put this in perspective, and it forced me to actually consider the impact that these policies have on real people, and that completely changed my outlook.
I've taught political philosophy to incarcerated students in the past, and this is the first time that I had the opportunity to do it as a regular weekly class, and that made it a very important and interesting experience. And the way that I teach the political philosophy course is exactly the way that I teach it on campus. So at Wesleyan, we talk about the ways in which our courses in prison are identical or similar or the same as or equal to the courses that we teach on campus. And while the material is the same and the intellectual goals are the same and the rigor is the same, it's really important, I think, to recognize that they're not the same kind of classes precisely because the incarcerated students don't have either the earlier educational resources or the current resources that the Wesleyan students have.
As expensive as our public investment in criminal punishment has been in financial terms, it has been more expensive in human terms. And the decline of this country and the decline of the workforce we cannot afford this type of human waste. And that we find such extraordinary students that go from algebraic illiteracy to study 3rd or 4th semester calculus, that are studying the German language, to read their favorite philosophers in the original, et cetera, et cetera. This is something that we've found over and over again in the prisons when you find people with little or no formal education, but have ambition and are treated with respect and dignity.
You can fit yourselves into conventional frameworks of assessment and evaluation, and if you do so, you need to be frank and honest and strategic, as Lori has suggested. You can also fit yourself into conventional rubrics of criminal justice policy, and hence define your mission as institutions, your goals as academics and faculty and students, as criminal justice goals in the most conventional senses of the term. Focusing on the transformation that you can effect on others and to lead to measurable outcomes of cost-benefit savings reflected in lower rates of recidivism. I would, as I think is pretty explicit in what Max has said, we would strongly suggest that you radically or fundamentally rethink the way you're going to think about what you do, the way you're going to talk about what you do, and what's at stake for the country and what you do as an intervention rhetorically in the larger conversation, both about what prisons are as public institutions, what their roles should and must be, their situation in the larger framework of the country, of how many people are going through and what are the outcomes of that, as a public question, not about the individualized decision-making process or measurable outcomes of the choices of the incarcerated or the perpetrator, but what prisons are as public institutions, the role they're playing and what they're producing and what they're not producing, at the same time as you think about what your intervention does about the educational system. Why this is important for the liberal arts colleges, why this is maybe important for the large city and state university systems. The form of the conversation, if you want to fit yourself into, well, we do this to lower recidivism, that's all there for you. If you want to talk about the transformation of individual decision-making processes, that's all there for you. And we would really encourage you to say, seriously pause of whether you want to fit yourselves and your institutional investment into those frameworks, or whether you really want to say, this is an opportunity for us to change the conversation about what prisons are and have become in this country, and what the role of colleges and universities is and should be in the country.
And the assessment that we did was to have the same kind of formal expectations of those students as we do at Vassar. So they had to write reactions to the readings every week. They had a final, a mid-semester exam. They had a final paper that they had to do on the materials of the course. And while I agree that assessment is really a crucial issue, I think all too often, and I think many of us realize this, the way in which we assess is so narrow. It is so narrow. So the truth is that many of the Vassar students, because of the kind of training that they have, obviously have the ability initially to begin to write, let's say write in certain ways. But I have to say that the Taconic students right off the bat were far more comfortable talking. Were much more comfortable about explicitly stating their opinions and challenging you and disagreeing. And so that, you know, if you want to assess what's happening in a classroom, it's not just going to be written work, it's going to be the kind of conversation that goes on. So I think you have to think about different measures of assessment as well.
I don't think you can fashion a respectable assessment instrument without knowing what the mission of your institution is. And that's crucial. I mean, you don't know what you're doing well as a college unless you know what you're supposed to do. If your goal is to control access to your diploma as much as possible, I'm very serious. I mean, we all are administrators in academic institutions. All of us here at this table are in institutions that are particularly, you know, the diploma, the credits is value. It's a property of value. The diploma is. Access to the campus is. If your goal is to constrict that as much as possible and measure it out as in as controlled a manner as possible to the most predictable recipients of it, that will inform your assessment of yourself as to whether you're doing a good job or not. And it's too big an opportunity when an institution wants to get involved in this kind of work. It's all the temptation is to, again, like I'm saying, to fit into the normal box that's pre-existing about how you're supposed to assess yourself, about how you're supposed to assess your students. What do we do here?
Yeah. Just to put a point on that, if a school, certainly like Vassar or Wesleyan or Bard, or any school is going to go into a prison and offer credits and degrees, you only do your student a disservice by not holding them to the same academic standards as you would a student on campus. And that is really essential. And how common, at least in the past, when there was a geyser of public money and these programs were free and often made money for schools, how common that was a problem. And when there's such limited money as there is now, that should not be the case, especially given the talent that exists within the prisons. It's just more waste.
We function at 2 degree levels in the BARD program, an associate's degree and a bachelor's degree program. And we have two waves of admissions or two moments of admissions, separate admissions processes to those two programs. The requirement for the associate's degree program is on the academic level, a high school diploma or its equivalent. That is then situated within an extremely competitive process. So we will typically run a first-year incoming cohort of 15 students and not uncommonly have 200 applicants who fulfill the base requirement competing for those 15 spots. We will invite those 150, 200 applicants into a room for about 3 hours where they're given a series of prompts from texts that are representative of either the barred admissions essays or from texts from class, whether it's a poem by Adrian Rich or a selection from Hobbes or what have you, or a poem by Stanley Kunitz, whatever it is that year. Several things from them to choose from. They'll choose a text and they'll write. They'll have 2 to 3 hours to write a response. We then have a faculty of professors and former graduates and administrators who will read blind each of those hundreds of essays. Alexis has done that for us in the past, and was laughing at the arduousness of that. And from those 150, 200 essay writers, we'll choose 40 or 50 to interview. Then after that, from that interview process, we'll select the 15. Those who are most promising but do not make the cut will be invited into a college prep class, not for credit, that the college runs. And that's how the admissions process works at the associate's degree level. The only requirement for eligibility to apply to the barred bachelor's degree program, as it's administered by the Prison Initiative, is having finished your associate's degree with a college. So people finish their associate's degrees with us and then reapply to the bachelor's degree program, and that process is not handled at the initiative, but by the Dean of Admissions.
The benefit of these programs, the dignity of these programs, everything that makes them worth doing is about what's similar to what happens on a conventional campus. You know, our jobs, the jobs of the people who administer these programs, is to insulate the faculty from these kind of concerns as much as possible, whether it be books or materials or, you know, mishigas from the students about couldn't do something or other because of some administrative detail that's incomprehensible to the teacher because they are not familiar with day-to-day stuff in the prison, right? The job of the administrator is to clear the decks as much as possible of those kind of concerns. When you talk about political content being a concern in a prison that wouldn't be in a college, you know, outside of a prison, it comes up. You know, we've been doing this for 10 years. We have 4 or 5 studio arts classes a semester now across the various prisons. It comes up every year or two. It really isn't, you know, something that one needs to worry too much about, with the exception of when you have faculty coming in, and this does happen, and it's something to avoid, that go in with a preconceived kind of political agenda that makes their students their subjects rather than their students. If you have a faculty member that's looking to make a political point, most often, frankly, for themselves rather than for their students, you're going to get your students and yourself in trouble.
And these students have a variety of different views about political positions, both contemporary and theoretical, and just as our students on campus do. So it's really important, just to reiterate what Max is saying, to recognize the diversity of opinion that you're going to find in any classroom, and if that classroom is in a prison setting, it's going to be there as well.
Prisons are nonetheless really politically charged places. My colleague Larry Mamiya, when he taught the first course that he just taught at Otisville, they made him remove certain things from his syllabus. So they were concerned that he was going to be talking about gangs. And so I think that sometimes that can happen. There can be a political issue. And my sense is you just take it in baby steps. You know, once he's been there a couple more times and it's moving well, because I believe the focus is, it's right, the focus is on the academic material, and people have very different opinions on that material.
To date, there has been little to no formal scrutiny on the intersection between the community college landscape and the prison landscape, and that is, from our view, a disaster. It's just a terrible, terrible shortcoming, and maybe that's something that the university here could help address. Here's a place where there could be some interesting cross-pollination between the community college campuses and the liberal arts colleges. You are actually, in the early days of a big fight in New York about what to keep open and what to close.
And I think the link between these kinds of prison programs and community colleges is something that the stronger we could make it, the better it would be.
I'm Vivian Nixon, Executive Director of College and Community Fellowship, and our role is to connect women to college when they get out of prison, if they haven't already finished when they're inside. Because you can't change the game if you're not in it. What I found doing this work is that the first couple of years while I was doing this work, when I was talking about the value of education and it's the right thing to do, and the moral premises for providing higher education to people in and after prison, I wasn't raising a single dollar for my program, and we would have been extinct had I not started talking about cost-benefit analysis and recidivism. So what am I to do?
You know, we're all competing for the same small pools of money, and it's pathetic because all of our programs are so inexpensive. They're so cheap. It's ridiculous.
Who pays for tuition, and how much does this, I don't ask for an exact amount, but what is the cost to this? You must have an idea since you're asking for money.
There's $132 billion that's going to be spent next year. And we're all talking about there's no money. Okay? The prisons do divide constituencies that SUNY and CUNY bring together.
The reason we educate is because it changes lives. It expands and makes human beings different, hopefully better. Some people are very well educated, but they're not better. It's true. I learned that from a very wise woman, Regent. She said, we've got a lot of smart people who do a lot of terrible things. So that is just the pure, absolute reason why we do what we do, why CUNY'S should be involved in the prison system in providing education, why all of these great institutions do it, is because it's what should be done. All the data supports that when you do it, it makes things better. It makes it better for those individuals who are incarcerated and will be formally incarcerated. It makes it better for society. We spend less money chasing them, locking them up, solving their social problems. All of that adds to a very easy, logical answer to why we do it. Thus, the issues that you raised before about society wanting vengeance, somebody to hate, somebody that they can blame everything on, that's true too. And that's the balance of the politics. Those who want to see things better, those who need to have a fall guy. Even a fall guy who has participated in his falling or her falling. The answer to this comes from us, from you. I have a bill that would create a study group to try and bring college programs permanently and make it a part of our correction system. It has been in my House. It hasn't gotten out of the Senate, didn't get out of a Democratic Senate. I doubt whether it'll get out of a Republican Senate. But I believe that it's what we have to do. And I need the voices of you, people like you, to raise this for as long as we need to raise it until it happens. That's why we do it, because it has to happen. Because how are we going to have Vivian Nixons on the street doing the great work that they do unless we invest in them? This is what makes sense. And this is what we, as an enlightened society, I hope, should do. We have the highest incarceration rate of in any civilized country, whatever civilized means. The statistics associated with who we lock up racially and economically are staggering. They're a disgrace. They're a national disgrace, but we pay no attention. The best of us pay no attention to it. Those who we think should pay attention pay no attention to it. So if we who understand don't raise it, don't make it important, don't be creative troublemakers, then when will it ever stop? So that's why I come here today, to listen to you, because the answer to stopping it is here. I can do what I can do. As long as you are there with me, we can do a lot. So that's very simple. My message is always very simple. Again, thank you all for the work that you do. I know that it makes a difference in this world. And for those who aren't in the game, come on, get in the game.